What's that? That can't be right. You got to be lying to me. The Vikings? Alone? In first place? In the North? Well, we're going to have to talk about that.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. And we all get to party together today because the Vikings are 2-0 and alone atop the NFC North in this early stage. And if you're new here, hello and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast. You have come to the right place for daily Minnesota Vikings analysis. You can just search this out wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts Monday through Friday. Search out Locked On Vikings. You can also find the show on Sirius XM on the XM app. If you search just Vikings on that, you can also find live broadcasts of all Minnesota Vikings games. Radio hometown broadcasts with Paul Allen and the crew. You can also find the show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. And boy, oh boy, are we going to party today, because the Vikings beat the 49ers 23-17, the final score, in a game that was not nearly as close as that score implied. It ended with like onside kick shenanigans at the two-minute warning, with the 49ers with no timeouts, driving and trying to like score back-to-back, down 2 scores in the fourth quarter. The Vikings had the dagger that put it away in about the middle of the fourth quarter with a 6-minute drive. And if you want to know really the vibe of this game for me, the like key moment, the most instructive moment of this game for me, came on that drive in the fourth quarter, leading by 6 and needing to at least burn some clock, if not score and extend your lead. And Sam Darnold converts 3 different third downs through the air on this drive. 2 of them to Brandon Powell on fairly routine execution, and 1 on, I think, what was anything but. And it was that one. You might remember the back shoulder seam thing to Jalen Nailor, but the legacy of that moment doesn't end there. Because by that point, Justin Jefferson had left the game with what turned out to be a quad contusion. Looked very Charlie Horsey in the moment, and it's something he's already, by the way, if you missed it, Justin Jefferson at the game said he's not going to miss any game time for this. It seems like a fairly minor thing, but it had knocked him out of the rest of this game. So here's the skill players. You also had Aaron Jones out of this game. So the skill players on this rep: Ty Chandler at running back, Johnny Munt at tight end, and then you're in 11 personnel with Jalen Nailor, Brandon Powell, and Trent Sherfield. You got to remember that the vision of the Vikings this year was J.J. McCarthy throwing to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and T.J. Hockenson. That's where we wanted to be whenever J.J. McCarthy was ready. Now we got Sam Darnold throwing to 2 guys that have been cut in recent years, and Jalen Nailor, who's having this sort of mini breakout, if you want to call it that, for being wide receiver 3. And then like Johnny Mutt and Ty Chandler. Like, that's it. And that whole drive, Sam Darnold moved the ball on one of the best defenses in the league to take 6 crucial minutes off the clock and put the 49ers in what was basically dead desperation territory. And that seam throw to Jalen Nailor is the one for me. It was smart play that whole drive, but it wasn't conservative play that whole drive. I haven't tweeted it out. In the last 2 years, with all the one-score games that the Vikings have endured, right? The Vikings fans have endured all of these stressful games where they get a big lead and then a turnover here or just a total offensive slump, and then suddenly they're making a comeback, and then suddenly you get this moment, and it happens in every damn game, where the Vikings have the ball with a lead in the fourth quarter and just need to choose some clock. And they would go, run, pass, punt and only take 2 minutes off. They would, have some incomplete passes or something. Sometimes they would take 13 seconds off because they would try to get too aggressive. They would always just totally fall out of their shorts. Not this time. This time, long, sustained drive, multiple clutch third down conversions, 2 of them to Brandon Powell, 1 to Naylor. Almost punching the ball in. They had first and goal from the 5, and an untimely, I think it was an illegal shift penalty, knocked them back, but it didn't really matter by then, because by that point, it was a chip shot field goal to go up 2 scores, and you had already taken off all of the 49ers timeouts and everything but like 3.5 minutes. And it put the 49ers in a situation where they had to go down the field and score something, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal, before the 2-minute warning, because they were out of timeouts. So if the Vikings get, once the 2-minute warning had happened, if the Vikings get possession, they're kneeling. So you had to keep possession away from them. You had to have an onside kick. And so that last drive, that last 49ers offensive drive, they moved the ball down the field very quickly. But everything was in bounds, and everything took just a scotch too long because the Vikings, I think in a great moment of situational masters, understood where they had to be and that they just needed to make this take a minute and a half. If it just took a minute and a half to do, then the game would be over. We'd be onside kicking. And that's exactly what they did. Nick Muse falls on the onside kick, and the Vikings kneel out the game and go to 2-0. There are so many moments outside of that to talk about here. And I think I want to go through like my general thoughts first, and then we can go to some of the major like swingy moments in this game. But the vibe I had in this whole game, and this might sound like I'm getting way out over my skis here, it felt like watching a playoff game, or at least a game between 2 playoff teams. It felt like the Sunday night game you look forward to all year, where these teams both have great players and everyone's going to make their play. It wasn't unlike watching like Bengals Chiefs afterwards, where Mahomes makes a play and then Jamar Chase makes a play. And you get one out of Chris Jones, and you get one in back and forth, and Trey Hendrickson, and back and forth and back and forth. Everybody's studs throwing a haymaker at some point in the game. And it's just a matter of who is going to make one more of those. And at the end of the day, that was the Vikings. They just made one more of those. It felt, if you wanted to call this fluky because the 49ers had 3 turnovers, or because, there was a call you felt they got or something like that, like you can go ahead. But it felt like these 2 teams were evenly matched. The run games were both soaring. The 49ers were able to run the ball pretty hard on the Vikings, but the Vikings were kind of matching that blow for blow. And they could both generate explosives in the pass game, including a huge one to Justin Jefferson, which we'll get into more detail on later. But it felt like evenly matched teams both slugging it out and leaving it all on the field. It was a very like divisional round of the playoffs vibe to me. And that's a really weird thing considering the context of what the 49ers were supposed to be this year and what the Vikings were supposed to be this year. One of these things did not match their expectations, and it's the one you wanted it to be. So I want to go over some of the big moments here and sort of recap the game through who we get to give hero trophies to. And then let's just take a breath and decide exactly how much this one means to our expectations of the Vikings. That'll all be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by PrizePicks, the best place to play daily fantasy. All you have to do is pick more than or less than on a 2 to 6 player list of stat projections, whatever you feel good about, and watch the winnings roll. And you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And of course, they've got their Caleb Williams thing going on all year. Now, look, here's the thing. Caleb Williams didn't do it great, but he's getting at least a passing yard every game. You can hang your hat on that. So if Caleb Williams gets 1 passing yard, you get 1 winning square, and you can add that to whatever your play already was. Let me tell you, I have been abusing this, and I have been raking it in on PrizePicks, and you can too if you know a little bit of ball. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by DoorDash, the clutchest app on my phone on Sundays. Let me tell you what, It is a busy time on NFL game day for me and all the different work that I have to do. And you don't really get a lot of time to like stand up and cook yourself a meal. So unless I want to live on granola bars, DoorDash is where we're going. I just got a great bowl of poke from a local place near me. And that is the other thing about DoorDash that has helped me really get to know all of the other places that are around me, maybe even walking distance to me that I never would have come across otherwise, just because I never go down that street or go to that area of town or whatever. And it has helped me really get acquainted with some places that I have really come to know and love. And right now you can use promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. It's a limited time offer and terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. Thanks again for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. If you want more thoughts from me about Caleb Williams, we're going to have to save that for a non-Vikings pod. And lucky for you, this Wednesday morning, I'll be on Locked On NFL. Go check it out. I'm on there with Tyler Rowland, the madman. He is going crazy every single morning on Locked On NFL, the new and improved Locked On NFL. And we got something a little more chill. If that's not your vibe, we've got the barbershop with Tony Wiggins at night. So come check it out, an AM and a PM show, and you can find me on Wednesday mornings there. So there are 3 different 14-point swings in this game. And what is so impossible to reconcile for me about this game is that this game, if you look at just like a win probability chart, very low drama game. You do not have the heart rate monitor going crazy all over the place. You don't have, really at no point after about the middle of the third quarter were the 49ers in anything but an up against the, cornered behind the 8-ball situation. But it sure as heck never feels like that, does it? The way I've started to think about this was the most dramatic low drama win ever. Because like the 49ers were never in a position where like they had the win in their grasp or anything like that. It was always, well, if they make this and then they get the touchdown and then they make a stop and then they go get another touchdown and then it's like they were always had a list of things they needed to do and they never really got that list down, even though it felt like they were making progress on it. But my goodness, some crazy stuff happened all over this game, from the CJ Ham punt block to a crazy Fred Warner interception on a tight window that Darnold was just a little bit too aggressive in testing. An Aaron Jones fumble at the one. And I count 3 different times that you could argue there was like a 14-point swing in this game one way or another. The first one was a 15-play drive from the San Francisco 49ers. They were running the ball beautifully. And part of that, I want to test this, and we'll talk about it more on Wednesday, which is when I really do the film stuff. Because I want to see this on film a little bit more closely. But my idea of why Jordan Mason was gashing the Vikings the way that he ends up with 100 yards rushing on the day, was the Vikings were playing the front side of zone really, really hard. If you think about a zone run, what are offensive linemen trying to do? They're trying to get to the play side of you. So if it's zone left, I'm trying to get to your left. I'm trying to seal you off and stop you from getting from my right to my left, right? And so the Vikings were being very aggressive in denying that and saying, no, I'm going to get to the play side. And I'm going to get in that gap where you don't want me to be. They did this against the Giants too, and it just totally suffocated the Giants. So that's what was on tape for the 49ers to prepare for, and that's roughly the same idea that the Vikings entered this game with. And you can tell that the running back room watched that and had an idea, because Jordan Mason was very quick about the cutbacks, and he was very disciplined about being on that sort of backside hip of all of his linemen. If you're playing really hard front side, I'm going to go essentially just turn that into down blocks, and I'm just going to cut up field, right? So these cutback lanes were there. And the Vikings sort of stemmed the bleeding in the second half, and I think they made this adjustment sooner than that, by sort of having their backside couple of players lag it a little bit more and be a little bit less aggressive. Really small adjustments, but that's the cat and mouse game you get in the trenches. Interesting stuff. But to begin the game, the 49ers had a 15-play drive that went all the way down to goal to go. Thanks to who else but Van Ginkel tipping the ball, almost ends up intercepted. Same diff. It was 4th down. And the Vikings get the ball at their own 2-yard line, false start to go back to their own 1-yard line. And we're going, oh my God, he has to go 99 yards again. 1 run play for 2 to get some breathing room. and then a 97-yard bomb to Justin Jefferson, touchdown Vikings. So he did do it again. Doesn't quite count as a 99-yard drive because it started at the 2 and not the 1. But it was 99 yards of offense was achieved. And what a crazy post. It was an absolute rainbow of a 60-yard bomba down the middle of the field. The high safety, the post safety for the 49ers took the cheese a little bit. He bit on something he wasn't supposed to bite on, let Justin Jefferson get behind him. But that throw had to be pretty incredible. Like, there are absolutely perfectly good NFL QBs that can't make that throw. But Sam Darnold could and did. Justin Jefferson, then he just gets the ball and it's the finish. And we have to also shout out Jalen Naylor on that play and the hustle of getting in to actually sort of downfield block in a way that wasn't a flag, just gets in the DB's way enough to allow Justin Jefferson to finish that thing without having to reach out or, dive or get tackled at the 1 or fumble out the back of the end zone like in Philly or any of that stupid stuff. That 14-point swing right there, right? Like the 49ers were about to score and go up 7-3. And then suddenly the Vikings are up 10-0, and the 49ers are going to spend the rest of this game chasing it. Then later, you kind of get the same thing on the other side of the field. You get a crazy tipped interception from Blake Cashman, who was all over the field. An unbelievable game for Cashman today. He tips the ball up. It gets tipped up by Harrison Smith. And on the tip drill, they're all just kind of tipping it to each other, trying to keep it up until somebody finally has the balance to take it down. That somebody is Josh Metellus. And then on the next play, first play after that interception, which Metellus was close to housing, a fake block, like a beautifully executed play action pass. Absolute testament to how important it is to really act on your fake. Jalen Naylor fakes blocking on duo, but he's actually going out for a fade, and he's left completely alone. It fools the 49ers completely, and it's the easiest pitch and catch you'll ever see for a touchdown, bringing the Vikings up to 20-7. Later in the game, the Vikings are on the wrong end of one of these, where you have a ridiculous fumble from Brock Purdy. It does go down as a fumble, where the ball just slips out of his hands when he's trying to throw it on a 3-man rush, falls directly into Jahad Ward's hands. I thought it was tipped, or I thought Van Ginkel got a hand on it. Nope, he just missed. He just slipped. Crazy bozo play from Brock Purdy. It leads to this very fast-paced Ty Chandler drive with like 3 runs and then a screen that Aaron Jones looks like he's about to house, and then he fumbles on the 1-yard line. Very frustrating stuff. And this is the part where it starts to kind of feel like it's unraveling, like every other game where the Vikings would get a 20-7 lead where they're not supposed to have it, and then suddenly they just totally crap their pants. And a 99-yard drive the other way brings it to 20-14. Another 14-point swing right there. So we have 14-point swings going back and forth this whole game. But because of how things started and kind of the order that they went in, none of them impacted the Vikings' win chances nearly as much as they felt like they did. And that's because if you just go down to down and you remove everyone's stupid crap, all the Brock Purdy slipping stuff, there's a play where Sam Darnold, there's an illegal shift, a player's in motion who's not supposed to be, and he ends up running between Darnold and Aaron Jones when it's supposed to be a toss play. So instead of underhand tossing it, Darnold lobs it overhand like he's trying to hook a basketball in, and it goes way over Aaron Jones's head, and it ends up in a 13-yard loss and could have been way worse. You take all these crappy disasters away. On a down-to-down basis, the Vikings were the better team. Against the San Francisco 49ers, they were the better team. And the 49ers weren't having an off day. George Kittle still got 76 yards. Deebo Samuel got 110 receiving. 100 yards on the ground just from one running back. They played their game. You had disruptions all over the place. Nick Bosa, 2 sacks, a Fred Warner interception. The corners were playing tight ball. The 49ers were playing 49er ball, and the Vikings rose to that and outplayed it. That has to be meaningful to you. It certainly is meaningful to me. So let's go into next exactly how this changes our opinion of the 2024 Minnesota Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to find last-minute tickets. Any tickets to whether it's a Vikings game, whether you're trying to get to the Texans game next week, now you're all hyped about it, or if you're trying to get to maybe the Week 17 Packers game, that's always a big one, or Kirk Cousins' return to US Bank Stadium, or whether it's screw a football game. What about a Twins game? What about an upcoming Timberwolves game, or a concert, comedy show, theater production, whatever it is, you can find tickets there on Gametime. You can get a seat view at Gametime. You can get a panorama of your view, so you can make sure that you're absolutely happy with your seat. You're not stuck behind a column or whatever. And you can get all-in pricing. You toggle that option on, and it'll tell you exactly what you are going to pay at checkout. No hidden fees. Everything is lumped in and shows you ahead of time what you are going to pay, so you can make that proper and informed decision. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Locked On Everydayers have heard me say this a lot over the past few months, that I'm a see it to believe it guy. That's what I've decided to be here with the Vikings. That there's a lot of stuff in theory that could have gone well or could have gone poorly, and instead of trying to predict it, I'll acknowledge the real probabilities and then say, show me. And that meant that I'm not going to have a very high view of the expectations on the Minnesota Vikings. I don't have Super Bowl aspirations for the Minnesota Vikings in their Sam Darnold transitional year. While a rookie quarterback they really want to start is hurt, right? This is going to be a transition year. Go be competitive and move on, and we'll call this one forgettable at the end of the day. That was kind of how I went into this one. A lot of people got really mad at me for that. People thought that I was being too harsh. I was being too negative. Some people thought I was just doing it to try to get attention or whatever. And longtime everydayers know that that's never going to be me. That if there's one thing you can rely on here, it's honesty. And if you disagree with me, you disagree with me, but know that I'm coming at it from a place of sincerity. But what I said is kind of a caveat to all of that. I said, hey, there's a reason they're favored to be last in the division. I said, they're looking like a 5-6 win team kind of. And that was sort of how Vegas was seeing it. Maybe it was like 7.5, I think. So maybe a little higher than that. But I always would caveat that with, but look, they got the Giants week 1, they got the 49ers week 2. If you come out the other end of that, 2-0 or a sensible 1-1 where you looked like you showed life, I'll change my tune. Here we are at 2-0. And it's not a fake game. It isn't one like I think about like the 5-0 start to 2016 where it was all defensive touchdowns and totally unsustainable fluky crap. No. If anything, the Vikings had as much fluky stuff go against them with fumble luck and a bunch of bozo crap they can fix and get better. And they did win the turnover battle in both of these games, but not by such a margin that it makes the game feel fake. I think it was 3-2 in this one. It's a pretty crazy game, but it's, +1. That's not that crazy. So in a way, the caveat that I had put on me kind of not really like being down on the Vikings has come to pass. The rubber has met the road here. The Vikings are 2-0, and they showed up the San Francisco 49ers. And now the question has to be asked, do you believe in them? To not believe in the Vikings, you would have to basically admit that nothing they could have done in this 2 games was going to convince you. They smacked a bad team in the Giants, and they outplayed and comfortably beat. I'll say comfortably beat, not blew out, right? Because it did end up being a 1-score game, but it was a comfortable game by win probability standards, not by traumatized Vikings fan standards. We'll never have a comfortable game. I wasn't comfortable up 28-6 in the 4th quarter against the Giants, okay? That's never going to happen. That's just how our emotions are now. We have to deal with that. But from a more objective standpoint, a comfortable win against a bona fide elite team. What more can they do to convince somebody like me who was with the rest of the world saying, this might not be their year? And I was like, okay with it too. It's like, hey, it might not be their year, but it's a transition, right? They're still kind of rebuilding. They're in the post-Kirk thing. And, they're trying to like put the Kwesi build to the finishing touches on the Kwesi build, and it's not done yet. Okay. But with how well guys like Andrew Van Ginkel are playing, was a role player everywhere else, but he has been a verified superstar here. Payson Cashman, Pace has this crazy game last week. Cashman has this crazy game this week. You're getting tons out of Grenard. You're getting tons out of the corners, out of this patchwork corner group that gave me so much pause. Stephon Gilmore does not look old. Shaq Griffin does not look washed. Both of those had those reputations. And the difference between reputation and like tangibly what they've laid down is striking. So I'm not going to beat myself up for looking at Sam Darnold and a couple of corners that haven't been good in 2 years and going, these guys give me pause. But what I'm also not going to do is watch those three guys in particular have good games weeks 1 and week 2 in challenging spots at some places, especially against the 49ers. But hey, Malik Neighbors, hey, these 49ers skill players, right? Good D-lines. Watching them overcome real challenges, I'm not going to do that and say, yeah, but their reputation was bad, so I don't believe it. That would be pretty dishonest of me. So I said, if they come out week 2, they take it to the 49ers, they give them a good fight, I'll be in. They did more than that. So I'm more than in. Let's go. This is still the get Sam paid year because I don't think that, I think outside of like a literal Super Bowl, I don't think there's a world where Sam Darnold stays the QB of the Vikings. They just love J.J. McCarthy too much. But that doesn't reflect on Sam Darnold. He's going to go be the prize of free agency because of what happens in Minnesota in 2024. Sam Darnold's going to go get paid, and it's going to be a direct reflection of the success that they have. So let's go get Sam Darnold paid. Let's sneak into a stupid playoff berth. Lead the division. Screw it. Home playoff game. Why not? Skull Vikings, I am all in. I needed to see exactly this to be convinced. I have seen this. I am convinced. I said it all off season long. I'd be a liar if I didn't follow through. Tomorrow is Twitter Tuesday, so you can send me your questions via the Google form, which is going to be linked in the show notes or the YouTube description of any podcast episode, or you can just send me an email at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. You can also just respond to the Twitter thread. I'll have that out in the morning on Monday sometime. You can find me live on the Minnesota Football Party Mondays and Thursdays on the Locked On Minnesota YouTube channel. That audio will also go up on this very podcast feed. So, of course, as always, be on the lookout for that, as well as the postcast after on Sundays after each game. And you can also find me on Locked On NFL on Wednesday mornings with the Madman Tyler Rowland. I hope if he doesn't have anything else he wants to talk about, if we have time to, I've got a Caleb Williams rant that I've been holstering, I've been waiting on. So if you want to hear me speak ill of the dead, then let's get it. I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.